All right, today what we're going to cover is part 2 of the series on reviews. So the first video on reviews, and if you haven't seen it, there'll be a link in the description below. That was some tips for the person who's conducting the review, so the manager. Well, in this video, what we're going to do is focus a little bit on, we'll focus exclusively on what is the employee's part of this. How can the employee ensure that they're having a better review and make the process smoother and more enjoyable for everybody. So we've got a handful of tips, about 5 or 6 of them, and we're going to jump right in. All right, the first tip lines right up with the tip we gave to managers, which is avoid surprises. So you may be thinking, well, gosh, how do I, as the employee, help avoid surprises? Well, a couple of things. One is, during the year, if you're not getting regular feedback, if you're not getting this kind of support from your manager, be sure to ask. You may even say to them, hey, I want to make sure we avoid surprises at the mid-year review or at the annual review. And so to do that, it's important that we talk pretty often. What you're also doing is showing ownership for your game, for your part. As a part of this conversation, what can sometimes happen is people will talk a lot about the technical aspects of their jobs. So they'll focus on, well, how many widgets did I make, or how many things did I create, or how many items did I sell? What's also a part of reviews, and oftentimes the parts where people get surprised, is on their behaviors and their communication. So that may be things like, gosh, where am I not communicating effectively with you or with other people? Where could I show greater ownership or responsibility or initiative in the tasks that I have got? So you may ask questions to flesh out some of the spots that are behavioral. And again, the goal here is to avoid surprises. One way you can position this with your manager is the reason you're asking for this feedback is that you can grow and learn as an individual. You want to make sure that you don't wait till the end of the year to get all of this feedback at once. You really want to get it during the year when it's most timely and you're able to be most productive with it. You may even say something like, I'm really counting on you to give me regular feedback on my performance so that I can continue to grow, I can learn, I can adjust my part with some of your feedback and tweak and tune what I'm doing. That's how I'm going to be a better team member. That's how I'm going to be a better employee. You're owning your part. One thing that can happen sometimes is team members may get some confusing or some fuzzy feedback from a manager. If that happens, again, you want to avoid surprises with yourself, so ask questions. If you hear something and you're thinking, gosh, I'm not sure what that means, or that doesn't really make sense, or I don't know when in the heck I did that, be sure to ask. You're not necessarily challenging what they're saying. What you're asking to do is to understand. You may even say that out loud. Hey, I'm not challenging what you're telling me. I'm really working to understand it though, and right now I'm not getting it the way you've described it. All right, your second great way to have good reviews, and this is something that's going to be important for everyone, is to be ready for some uncomfortable conversations. Managers sometimes, even if you ask, they may not do a great job of sharing things with you. They may not get to that thing on a regular basis. And then at the end of the year, it's right there in the company's process for having reviews. And so they do hit it. So be ready for some feedback. Be ready to hear your growth areas. And instead of seeing this as, oh, I failed, or this is an attack on me personally, remember this is really just feedback about how well you're meeting the expectations of a particular role. And here's a great part. We're all growing, we're all evolving, we're all learning. So by being ready, what you're doing is you're letting yourself have that space. You're giving yourself that grace to get some news that may be a little bit uncomfortable, maybe a little bit hard to hear even. And you're ensuring that you will have a good face in that conversation. You won't you're less likely to buck or fight or resist something or say, well, that's bullshit. So being ready for some tough feedback is really a mindset as much as anything. So play with that one. In conjunction with being ready is another key part, which is don't avoid the hard things. Oftentimes we are not really wired, we're not really comfortable getting into the hard stuff. When you hit the hard stuff though, this is probably where you have the most space to grow. Here's another way to think about it. All of us have probably had a parent, another family member like an aunt, grandparent maybe, a coach, a teacher, someone in the community who might have had a really important conversation with us that we felt a little uncomfortable about. What we also knew though was that that person was doing that to help us. They weren't there to be a jerk or to beat us down. They were really doing what they were doing because they cared about us and about us improving our game. So when you don't avoid the hard stuff, when you go for those things that you may be a little reluctant to jump into, you're gonna get to probably the areas that are most important for you. They're gonna be most important for the team. All right, the fourth item is going to be something I've already talked about a little bit, and I'm gonna hit it head on, which is be thankful. Remember that this can be a difficult conversation, not just for the employee getting the review. Sometimes managers are really uncomfortable having these conversations with team members. So what you want to do is be thankful. You want to receive what they're sharing, even if you think, gosh, I don't fully agree with that. That's a mindset that isn't going to necessarily help you in that moment. So I'd set that aside. Just take what they have to say, make some notes, and then chew on it and be thankful for what they're sharing with you. Again, remember, they're helping you learn more about yourself and how others are perceiving what you're doing in the workspace. All right, the last one is keep your eye on the prize. And what I mean by this is you probably know where you're doing things pretty well. You probably got a sense of where you have some space to grow. You probably also have an idea of, man, I want to go to this job, or I want to move into this other position. And most managers will have a space in the annual review process for, hey, what's your goal over the next 3 years, or what position would you like to be in at some point in the future? This is where you can keep your eye on that prize. You can, in your annual review, talk to your manager and say, hey, Sheila, we've talked about me moving into this senior project manager role. Right now I'm a project manager. We've talked about me going to be a senior project manager. What specific areas do you see for me that are critical for me to improve on in order for me to be ready to get to that senior project manager position? So now what you're doing is you're asking about where you want to go. If you're newer to your job, say you've been there just maybe a year or two, you may ask, hey, what can I continue to do better so that I am not just meeting expectations, I'm really exceeding expectations. So now you're showing ownership for where you want to go. You may be literally asking questions about the next job you have in mind that you've discussed with your manager, and you're showing a willingness to get some feedback to learn how you can grow. Here's some of the key things so that you'll be ready to take that position on. So we hope this is helpful. Again, if you are a manager, you will have a review from your manager at some point, so this will be helpful for you. Also, don't forget to check out that other video we have on some review tips for managers who are conducting a review with an employee. We hope these are helpful, and I'm sure there's other parts of the review process for either managers or the person getting the review that you all have experienced or have heard about. Please add those into the comments. This is how we can update these things over time or add some other notes on our blogs, and be sure to bring the collective wisdom from this group right into a nice clean space. Good to see you guys. Take care.